To
Start again.
welcome to a program with Marion Audubon. Today we have Nicole Koeltzow with us, which I am super excited about because Nicole is actually the one who got me into birding 6 years ago, which has changed my life. So I'm super excited to introduce her to the rest of you guys. And she is probably the most enthusiastic birder I've ever met. She is nonstop. And she is so good at helping other people learn about birding, and even takes the time to teach people eBird and just all kinds of skills and things. So she in 2018 earned her place among great big year birders, and right now we have her here to tell us about it. So Nicole, welcome. And I think some of us might not even know what a big year is. So can you tell us about that?
Sure. Do you want me to share my screen now? Go into it?
Yes.
Sure, go ahead.
I have a slide. That's why. Okay. Does it take up the whole screen? There. Is that better?
And then yes, and then play. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
There we go. All right. So, okay. So what is a big year? So it's a whole calendar year. So from January 1st to December 31st, starting at midnight, ending at 11:59. And you go around and you try to see as many birds that you can see. And so there are codes to these birds. Code 1 and 2 are the regular breeding birds. There's 695 of those, which I did get all of them for the year. Code 3 is a lower number, but annually, kind of like the grass quit, or banana quit. Code 4, like 6 or more, but not usual, or code 5 bird, which is fewer than 5 or like 3 in the past 30 years. And this is a Nida dove. Got on a plane and got that. A friend of mine picked me up from the airport and went over, and then he's like, oh, I gotta go back to work. And I'm thinking, okay, if the bird doesn't show up in the next 5 minutes, do I just stay here and then try to Uber back to the airport? Or maybe somebody else from my, friends in Miami will come and then take me to the airport. I think I'll just stay. But we saw the bird in the next 5 minutes, so it didn't matter. And there's all kinds of ways of listing. People have their backyard list. Their patch list, so they go to a specific park a lot and bird that area. The county listings, wherever they live, or certain counties are more important to them. Kind of like Miami-Dade is one of my favorite, or one of my important county listing, as well as San Diego County, because I just birded a lot there and it's really birdy. Then there's state listings. So I've met people from Tennessee and North Carolina that have over 400 birds for that state alone. And then Californians go a bit further. You're not really considered much of a birder unless you have 500 for the state. Then the 5-mile radius I got into definitely during COVID. And so that's like a 5-mile radius from your home, and some people do it from their workplace. And then they just see how many birds they can get around that 5-mile radius. And then we have the ABA listing. And so that is all of the United States, including Hawaii now, and all of Canada. So some people will talk about traditional ABA. So that is both countries minus Hawaii. And then there's also the lower 48 is another listing. So this picture, the red phalarope, I was in Delaware looking for redneck grebe that I needed for the year. And lo and behold, I found a red phalarope. I got a message from a new friend, Zach, who was like, an out-of-town birder found a red phalarope. You should go try to get that. And I was like, I was the out-of-town birder that found it. And so it's pretty funny. So there's a lot of people that are into even, different counties and listing for their state, or even, like I said, particular states they like. So I didn't have a plan to do a big year. I was just going to work on my life births. So I was at 632 before I started 2018. And I just wanted to get to cumulative 700. And to me, I was just like, well, I started the year in Pennsylvania, and I was going to see what I could see, and I also wanted to work on 100 birds for every state. I just thought that was kind of a fun thing, because January 1 comes around and you're like, yes, I can count that European starling now. I'm so glad to see it. And then, you tick it, and then you're like, okay, now there's a whole bunch of them. Don't really care for them. But it makes it fun again. And like, you just run around and you have to go to different habitats. And are you going to be there in the winter or the spring? And so, just kind of planning and seeing the states and that kind of thing. So that was my goals for 2018. Who kind of started this, like getting into the big year and chasing things, was two different particular birds. So I was looking for a barnacle goose, and for 2.5 days, the whole 2.5 days, from sun up to sundown. And you can ask Michelle later, we do definitely bird from sun up to sundown, or sometimes beyond, depending on if we're owling. And at lunchtime, I looked at my phone at the weather in New Brunswick and was like, because this is where the missel thrush is at. You know what? It's going to be sunny and 42 degrees Fahrenheit for the next 3 days. Yeah, I think I'm going to go for the missel thrush. So that barnacle goose wasn't seen the rest of the time. And so I decided, okay, forget the barnacle goose because it is a wild goose chase, and I'm going to go for that missel thrush. So the first day that I decided it wasn't there was no report. It wasn't seen. And I'm like, you got to be kidding me. It was like over 80 days that this bird has been seen. And I heard the podcast that Peter gave, and I was like, I've got to see this bird. And so I was in Connecticut. It was about 11, 12 hours to get to the missel thrush, or about 16 to go back home to Georgia. I thought it would be a great idea to go on the scenic route home. So I went to go get my lifer long-eared owl. So that was my first lifer of the year. And then I started heading north, and I stopped at Portland, Maine at midnight, slept 5 hours, got up, and then started driving, because I figured out that if I got up at 5 o'clock and then drove, I would get there around 2 in Canada, and then I would still have a couple hours before the sun sets, because it sets a lot faster. And so I got up there and I stopped at Tim Hortons to have lunch, because it's 2 o'clock in the afternoon and I hadn't eaten anything. And I was like, I'll just look for 30 minutes and then I'll eat my lunch. Well, I have no idea how long I looked for this bird, but I did meet a nice Canadian that wasn't a birder. He told me what shrub to look in, and lo and behold, the bird flew in and I got it. And I was like, oh my gosh, I got the bird. But there was no one on the streets. I was just going to tell somebody, but there were no Canadians out walking around in the snow. And it did happen to have a nice dusting of an inch of snow that day. But there was not supposed to be any snow. And so it was kind of anticlimactic. And then also within that 5 minutes of seeing this bird, the Behonium waxwings landed in the top of the tree with the missel thrush, which is also a live bird for me. So it was quite a great day, but somewhat of a letdown, because I was like, no one to share it with, no hugs, nothing. So, but I did get to meet Peter and his wife, and they're very nice and helped me get some other live birds in Canada. Then I heard about this chicken run and going and get your chickens. And I'm like, what? I was looking for a northern goshawk, And this father and son were telling me all about the chicken runs, and you've got to do it and all this stuff. And it's in April. You kind of run around several states like Colorado or Oklahoma, and get these chickens. And I was like, that sounds really interesting. So, these seeds are planted in me, and then they grow. And I ended up going and getting to see these chickens, which are fantastic. I love how they march and dance and do their little. So another thing that I really wanted to see were ptarmigans. I think they're just beautiful when you look at it in your book or on your app. And so I really, really wanted to see ptarmigan. So there is the white-tailed ptarmigan in the top left and the bottom left corner, and you can see if you can find the 4 in the bottom left corner. Then the rock ptarmigan I got on Adak. The willow ptarmigan is just outside of Anchorage in Alaska. Now, birding doesn't take you to the most desirable places. The Tampa lupus crow is at the Brownsville dump, but you eventually have to make your way because people talk about this Brownsville dump, and you're like, okay, we gotta go and see. And of course, it's smelly, and there's adults flying around all over the place, and they're pooping on your car. But that's all part of the experience. What I didn't expect is Gailey and Dean showing up, and we had a blast. We were just laughing, carrying on, but we're still birding, seriously trying to find the crow and everything. And then the crows came in, and everything got really serious, and we went down to where they were, and finally did get one of the crows, the Tampa lupus crow. So in a smelly place, you can still have fun anywhere birding. So I wanted to hit 600 birds because I was still going back to work like June 3rd or 13th, somewhere around there, because I did finagle to move it back a little bit. And I hit 600 birds May 9th. And so May 12th is my birthday. And it was the Savins goal, and it was on the repositioning cruise from LA to British Columbia, Canada. And highly recommend it. Really awesome. It was one of my favorites because I didn't have to figure out where I was going to go that night. I didn't have to figure out food. They have it all there on the boat, and you just go to your cabin, and there's showers too. So you just go out and freeze on the deck, and then you come back and you can get food and shelter and a hot shower, which is great. Alaska birding was some of my favorites, but also very cold adventures. And just getting to Alaska, this is on Adak. So in the movie, if you've seen The Big Year or read the book, they fly all the way out to Attu. You can still fly to Adak, but we took a boat with John Pushak, and it took 3 days by boats to go out there. And we actually got in a storm of about 20-foot seas, high seas. And so we had to seek shelter in Kiska. And I'll show you a couple birds that we saw from there. But it also looked like we weren't going to make it to Attu. Oh, I forgot to say. So I flew into Adak from Anchorage, and we got there, and the boat had come from Homer, Alaska, and they did that journey by themselves, the crew and everything. And the boat broke by the time it got to Adak. So on Adak, the flights are not every day. They're only on Wednesdays and Saturdays. So we had to wait 3 days to get the part. And the guy got the part, flew in, fixed it, and then somewhere around midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning, we were on our way to Attu. So there was definitely a lot of different adventures. And so what do you do for those 3 days that you're stuck on Attu or Adak? Well, Adak is also really good birding, and we did get birds on Adak as well. So it wasn't like wasted time. We weren't just sitting on a boat not doing anything. And so when we finally did get to Attu, here are a few of the birds. This gray bunting was one that John and Neil Hayward hadn't seen before, but always wanted to see. They were so excited. I always think that's great when you can get the guides, get a lifer for them, because they've seen a lot of birds. And then just here's some other birds. So we had 17 coated birds. Usually when people say coated, it's 3 or higher to 5. And so we had 17 the first full day that we were on Attu. And then the guides told us that evening during dinner. Now that doesn't happen. You don't always get that many. And we got to where like extra tufts are kind of known in Alaska, like your boot of choice. And I got mine insulated, which I highly recommend always getting insulated boots and for Alaska. And we were just walking around, usually like mid calf to knee deep of vegetation. And you're always bringing your rain gear because you never know when it's going to rain. And you just walk around trying to find birds and scare them up. And then sometimes you're walking a line to try to push the birds so we can make them fly, but then we can find them later in front of us. So, and John also brought bicycles because they would bike to get to the birds. And so we got to do that. You can bike the runways even still. So it was quite an experience and I really enjoyed it. And I definitely, while I was there, took a moment to think about 60 birders on the island at one time, just going all over the place. And if you wanted to go see, the gray streaked flycatcher, you go with this group. And then if you wanted to go see the eastern yellow wagtail, you go with this group. So it had to be incredible. And there's also in the building that they would stay in, people would write their names and their number at that time. And so we also got to do that, write our name and the number that we had at that point. And I remember there was a redneck stent on, they weren't together. This was like the second day that we saw them. One was on this other side and John had gone over to this other one and he was like, does anybody want to see a redneck stent? And I was like, yes. So I like went across by myself and then I was like, I don't think I'm in the right spot, but I knew where the boat was. So I just started to head back that way. And then we saw an eyebrow thrush before we got back. So every day we would go from the boat out to the island, Attu, and then we'd walk around and we'd have our like sack lunch for the day. And then in the evening, we came back for dinner and we came back and stayed on the boat. And then we didn't go back out. We just waited till the next day, which was quite comfortable. You could take a shower, you could do laundry. It was quite comfortable. It was definitely rocking and rolling when we were going out there, but on the way back, since we were going with the current, it was a lot easier, in my opinion. Okay, so this lesser sand plover was one that we saw. The only time was on that island, Kiska. And so some of the guys were like, oh, and now we can work on a different island list. And I was like, okay, so it's kind of like working on a different county list, Also, let's see, this white wagtail, that was in Gamble, as well as the willow warbler was in Gamble. And the, okay, that's not a white eyebrow thrush. That is a sharp tail, the sandpiper. And then, okay, the falcated duck was at Adak. The red flank blue tail, that was in St. Paul. The red-throated pipit, that was on Gamble. Emperor goose, I saw several places. I saw, this is actually taken in St. Paul, but I also saw it on Gamble, like 100 of them at a great distance. And then there was also in Adak too. We saw it in Adak before we went out to Attu. The Victoria pipit, that was in Gamble. And the brambling and the common rosefinch, those were both in St. Paul. So Gamble, you can fly to there. So you go from Anchorage to Nome to Gamble. And so you can get like food, bring your food in if you're going to be independent. From Nome, they have a grocery store. And then St. Paul, they have a grocery store there, but they're packing all the fish, processing fish. So they provide food for their workers. And we can go in and have breakfast, lunch, or dinner, or any of the meals or all of the meals. And then you stay in a hotel and it's really nice and it has laundry and hot showers. In Adak, we just stayed on the boat. We just lived on the boat and had all our meals from the boat. And then we had vehicles to drive around on Adak. So the Montezuma quail, this is a plug to, it's hard for me to give up when I'm birding. And the Montezuma quail were coming into a feeder, and the lady this was Good Friday. And the lady's like, oh, you missed them. They already came in and fed, and they're not going to come anymore today. I was the only birder there. And I decided, well, I'm waiting for a friend to come. So I decided to just sit there, be really quiet, and see if they would come back. And they did for about 7 minutes. They were right there feeding along the fence, and both male and female. So just persevere, because you never know what's going to show up, and just keep looking. So a couple of my chase birds that I have done, the great black hawk. And so Amanda, Damon, and I decided we were in Phoenix, Arizona, and we're going to go to the California Gulch. And I just wanted to see if we can get pictures during the daytime, if we could find the buff belly nightjars. And so we start headed down that way. And then I get a text message saying the great black hawk is in Maine. And so backstory, when I was not doing a big year, I was going for the yellow green vireo in Texas. And I happened to be there the day after it was seen in Texas on the South Padre Island. And so I looked for it there, but missed it. And so when there was a second sighting all the way in Maine, I was like, we got to go for it. So we went back, packed a bag, and got on the flight early that morning, and then flew and got in at like 6 in the morning. And then I'm checking the Facebook because they're putting on like where it is and they're like what street and everything. And I'm like, okay, great. We're going to be there in 20 minutes, and then we roll up to that last road that they said they were on. And all of a sudden there is no birders, no cars, nothing. And I'm like, okay, so we drive to the end of the street. And I was like, go left or right? And I go right. And we went right and we found the birders, but they're all like, kind of looking at their cameras and looking around, but nobody's like intently photographing or anything or looking. And so we just missed it. And that is not what you want to hear. And so we ended up looking around. We did get to see the bird later on that day. And this was like the last day it was seen, and it flew around and went out to sea and then wasn't seen for a while, but it did come back. They did re-find it. So we were just really lucky in that we got to see it. And when you do these chases, and there is a lot of pressure to try to get these numbers and get really high and get photos and stuff like this. I remember hiking in Arizona, and I was trying to go get this oriole, and all of a sudden there were like 8 birders, and they're all looking up in the trees. And so as I'm passing them, I'm like, so what are y'all seeing? And they saw an acorn woodpecker. And so just to double check that it's just an acorn woodpecker. And then I was like, oh, remember thinking, if I could only take the time and go slow and like just enjoy watching acorn woodpeckers, that would be so nice. But I can't. I had to stay on task, and because you only get so much daylight too. And another chase bird was the curlew sandpiper. So I was with the Deans, Gailey and Dick Dean, and the Stoll brothers, and I had just traveled across the country and together. And then Amanda flew in as well. So we all met, and we were going for the Himalaya snowcocks in Nevada. So we got up and started hiking about 4:30 in the morning with headlamps. We're walking in the dark up the path, and we get to the top right around sunrise, and we're looking for the birds, and we did find them. And then we just enjoyed the day. As we came back down, we took a group picture up there. It was just great to we all decided to meet there and go and get the Himalaya snowcocks together. So that was a lot of fun. I had a few things like that, but a lot of it was kind of by myself, or Amanda met up with me for a lot of them too as well. And then we get back down, and I back in cell phone reception, and I get a text message. This is before I even hit eBird, that there's a curlew sandpiper in North Carolina. So I take 20 minutes, pack my 2 bags, go with Amanda. The Stoll brothers take my van, and they're going to drive to Phoenix and meet us in a couple days. They're just going to bird along the way. And then Amanda and I go to Salt Lake City, because that was the closest place to fly out, go back to Phoenix because she needed to do some stuff. And then we flew all the way to North Carolina. We have about 3 hours of daylight and 1 hour to drive from the airport. And we get in the rental car. It didn't have any air conditioning. This is August. You need air conditioning in the South. And so we had to switch cars, then get back in and drive to the site. We were getting out. The lady that found the curlew sandpiper actually came out to help us find it. I had my scope up looking, and I found the bird as we had maybe 20 minutes left of the twilight light for that day. This is actually a picture of it the next day. A little bit better light that we had. But yeah, so you just never know if you're going to get these birds. But when I get on the plane, I can just be like, oh, I can relax. But then we had to switch planes, I think at least 2 planes, and we had thunderstorms, and our plane wasn't able to take off in time. So you're like, oh crap, but the daylight, we're losing the daylight. So that's always the fun part of traveling after these birds. So I did go to Hawaii because I did want to be with the next, people are the traditional ABA with including Hawaii. So it is extremely hard to bird here because it's really hard to access some of these places. Sometimes you need a guide. Sometimes it's a lottery system that you have to put in and hope that you can get it to be able to access these closed off areas. So I highly recommend, if you want to see the birds in Hawaii, a lot of them are not doing that great, I hear. And so I would put that at the top of the list to go out and see them. But they're quite beautiful. They will not disappoint for sure. They're very showy. So this chase, I was at the Rice and Rail Festival in Louisiana. Highly recommend that. It's a lot of fun riding around on the tractors and seeing the rails being flushed, and then seeing them banded in hand for some of them. So we got the yellow rail, and then these will go around the screen. We'll start with the big pink one, which everybody can probably guess that it's the American flamingo. And then if we move to the left, that's the roadside hawk. Then below the roadside hawk is the gray heron. And then we have the banana quit. And then it might be hard to see, but those orange legs are the spotted redshank. So these 5 birds are all being seen while I'm at the Yellow Rail Festival. And one thing that, it's like an urgency that you need to go and collect them, see them before they go. But Barb and Dean Stuman and I met there, and we were doing the Yellow Rail Festival, and they're like, we understand that you might have to go away, but you never know how much time you get with people. And I really just wanted to spend that time with them. So I was gambling, like, the time with the Stumans were more important than going and getting these birds. And then at the last day, I actually I decided to go for the banana quit. And so I had fog. I was able to fly from one airport to the other, and then I got stuck for the whole day. It just would not lift. And then the evening, I didn't get there till the evening for the grass quit, the banana quit. And then in the morning, as my Uber was dropping me off, I can see the banana quit jumping around in the bushes, and I'm like, great. And I'm getting my luggage out, and I get there, and then it is gone. And I didn't see it until about 2 p.m. So, and I was able to get that picture. And then at that point, you're looking at the reports and you're like, okay, which bird should I go and get? I really wanted to get that gray heron because I didn't know if it was going to stick around or not, but it was all the way up in Newfoundland, Canada. So I was gonna lose another day of traveling and not be may miss one of these other birds. So I said, okay, I'm gonna go for the spotted red shank, because I can get from a flight from Miami out and get to Michigan and land there, stay the night, get that early in the morning, and then kind of make the rest of the way for the gray heron. Because the roadside hawk is in Texas. It's during the Rio Grande Birding Festival just started. So I knew there was going to be a lot of eyes. A lot of people are going to look for that. And the flamingos usually stick around. They're pretty cooperative. So this is how I was playing the gamble game. So I went and got the spotted red shank. That was the last day that I saw it. I also met up with the Deans on accident. We just showed up together. So then we decided we're going to go for the gray heron. And we all go to Boston, and we couldn't fly out until the next day, and we had to take 2 more planes to get to Newfoundland. And then they decided not to go. I decided to continue on, and I got up there. Once again, by the time I landed, these short days that I couldn't get the bird. So I stayed the night then in St. Paul, and then drove down to get it and had breakfast with it in the morning. And then flew out the next day for Texas to get the roadside hawk, which I was able to get that I think I was down in Texas for a day or 2 because I was still needing the hook-bill kite. And so I looked for that after I got the roadside hawk, and then cut my losses and went to Florida to get the flamingo. And so the Stumans, I went with Dean to go look for the flamingo. And we drove there, we got to St. Mark's, and I love this National Wildlife Refuge. It's one of my favorites. And we went around the whole pond to look for the flamingo. But as we were getting out of the vehicle and I'm putting on my camera and getting a scope and everything, Dean's like, maybe we should go just look at the vermilion flycatcher, that's always there. And I go, let's go get the other pink bird that we came here for first, and then we can photograph that one. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So we go out there, we hike all the way out on the pond. Barb calls, we're talking to her, and Dean's like, yeah, we only got like an hour and a half. And I'm like, hour and a half? Oh my gosh. So I pick up the scope and we start walking back to the car, and he's still talking to Barb on the phone. And then we get there and I take a couple pictures of the vermilion flycatcher, and this vehicle comes up, and they stop and they go, did you want to see the big pink bird? We never even ran into these people. And so we're like, yes, it's down by the lighthouse. So we pack up real quick and we drive. Well, Dean drives us down there, and I'm thinking, gosh, this is the time I would be okay with speeding just a little bit. to get there because you never know when these birds are going to take off. We were down there. I like jumped out shooting the bird, and then it stayed, but these other birders walked up and it had just flown. So we went around back to this other boat ramp, which we found it again, and they were able to, we got it in the scope and everybody got to see it. So 2 other couples did. But that was kind of a crazy chase, and it all worked out. Like I got all the birds that I wanted to get, but it was definitely a little bit of nail biting, if I was going to get it or not. So just to tell you the totals. So this bird right here is the Smith's longspur. It was my last bird that I got for the year, December the 23rd. So I didn't get one right at the end like I wanted to, but my numbers aren't bad. So I had 830 with Hawaii, 774 without Hawaii, and 706 with the lower 48. So I won it in all 3 categories. And then I was the top female birder that year in all 3 categories, for if you're just looking at females doing big years. I also, stuck to my plan where I got 208 lifers that year. I only needed 68 to make it to 700 cumulatively. And then I didn't even think I would get to 700 for the year. So it did a lot better than I thought. And then, I did get to add 15 states to make it 100 birds. Some of those states I did already have birded a lot, and it just needed a few extra birds or whatever. But yeah, it was a wild and crazy but fun year. Thank you. Does anybody have any questions?
Great. Thank you, Nicole. Any questions, if you want to just type them into the chat, and then I will ask Nicole. One thing that Nicole didn't mention was the fact that she was in Colombia for 10 days during her big year, which nobody does. If you're doing a big year, you do not miss any days. Yet she spent 10 days in Colombia. So that's another accomplishment.
With Michelle.
What was it?
I wasn't planning on doing a big year. I decided on my birthday, May 12th, that I was going to do a big year. I was going to go for it. I had 600 birds. Might as well.
Now, Nicole, are you writing a book about all of this of your big year?
Yes, I am. I am writing a book.
Okay, awesome.
You sleeping?
There's a lot more to it, I'm sure. A lot more details and a lot more adventures that you had. So I'd love to read that. Do you have a blog?
So I started one on Facebook, just Nicole's Big Year. And I didn't have time to type things up or write things out, do spell check and stuff like that. And I actually like doing little video clips, and I have shared some of them, not all of them. I don't know if people would be interested in it now, but I did post stuff on Facebook, but there was a lot of sleepless nights, and I would bird literally from sun up to sundown, and then drive sometimes 5 or 6 hours to be positioned for the next day and bird and do it all over again.
Okay. Let's see. Are you still chasing birds now?
Yes, I am. Actually, I did get the blue mockingbird. I don't know if people have seen the reports, but it's in New Mexico, and I did get that this morning. That's why I'm in Texas, New Mexico area. So yeah, still chasing. That was 810. That's without Hawaii. That's my number without Hawaii.
And Scott wants to know if you saw any vagrants in Hawaii.
Not any really good ones, that people, but I can't think of anything like right offhand. I'll look at my Hawaii checklist if you want, but
Did you see any of the Kauai, any of those Kauai birds that are almost extinct?
yes, I got all of the Kauai birds. The one that I'm missing is the Maui parrotbill. It's the only of the Hawaii birds. And that one's just, it's with the Nature Conservancy, and it's a lottery system. Only 12 people go in, and it's one Saturday. I think it's the second Saturday every month. And then it's a tier. So if you're a state resident, you have a higher tier. If you are an Nature Conservancy member, you're higher, and then everybody else. So guess what I became a member of?
I can guess.
It's, let's see. I know that they get some weird things that blow in. Oh, I did get a cackling goose. One of the times, not that's kind of odd there, I think.
Yeah.
Trying to see. Yeah. Nothing else really sticks out. Oh, maybe white-faced ibis might be rare there. House sparrows are there.
Yes.
Might be an interesting child. Can you get a house sparrow in every state? I don't know if we want to know that.
What were some of the seabirds that were some of the vagrant oceanic birds you saw, pelagics?
I did get like, oh, just in general.
Yeah.
Okay, one funny story. So that I had on the repositioning cruise, Alex Abella, met him there on the cruise, and he was like, where are you going to get your model petrol? Because they're not going to do the, like, you couldn't do the repositioning cruise in the reverse, and that's usually when they would get the model petrol. And I was like, inside, I was just like, my gosh, I don't even know what a model petrol is. I'm gonna have to look that up when I get back to the room, you know, because I didn't want to seem like I don't know, because like I didn't plan, so I didn't like really study or learn all about these birds. I was like learning on the fly, literally. And so he's like, "Are you going to Alaska?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm heading there after this. Like when I land in Canada, I fly to Alaska again to catch the boat to go to Attu." And he's like, "Oh, you'll get it there." And then another pelagic bird, two more. So Neil Hayward was saying on part of the rules, you know, like, you know, if you're in the galley eating a meal and someone yells, you know, short-tailed shearwater or a good bird, you know, or short-tailed albatross, there's no way you're going to climb all those steps and get here and get to see the bird. Well, I don't really try to prove people wrong, but that's exactly what happened. They were yelling short-tail albatross, and I literally just ran up all the steps. Somebody had their binoculars on the seat right there, and I picked it up and ran over, and I was able to get on it. And then I was able to photograph it later. We did see other short-tailed albatrosses. And then also on that boat back, when we were coming back to Adak, we had to actually leave early. We couldn't even bird this one, our whole last day that we were supposed to have on Attu because the weather was bad. And on the way back, they said most people don't really sea watch, but we were. And there was the whiskered auklets that were seen around the boat. And we even got killer whales on the way back too. And so that was one, there's the whisker auklet spot that you can go with John. He does another trip off of Adak just to get them. And we weren't even able to go to that. So we were very lucky that they were there, and they usually don't see them on the return. So that was a good bird, because that was one I really wanted to see. That one's the one that has these little plumes in front.
right. Pratibha would like to know how many states you birded in for your big year.
You know, it would be so hard to like try to remember which ones years later. So I just did them all 50. And I am the first birder that has done that has birded in all 50 states. You don't need to, but it was just kind of a fun challenge.
In 1976, I did the least well-known big year in history. I did 46 states. So
Oh, cool. Do you remember the 4 you didn't go to?
Yep. Well, I was actually trying to remember that. Well, Hawaii was one, Arkansas, South Dakota, and I can't remember the fourth.
See, it's just better to do them all 50.
I know I drove 15 miles on my way to set foot in North Dakota because I was thinking about doing 49 of the, but then I never got to South Dakota. So.
Yeah, the Dakotas are hard. I would agree.
Michelle, are you covering more chats?
Yep. We're good.
I'm going to read them off.
I have been. We're good on the chats. We're done with the chats. All right. Are there any other questions?
I think somebody was asking how much it was, the traveling cost.
Well, I don't want to know how much I actually spent on that. And I had other friends too let me stay at their house, or, you know, share hotel rooms with people and costs with rental cars, and, you know, but you can't really get around, like, because if you need a rental car, get on a flight or something like that, it definitely adds up for sure. Yeah.
All right. Jim has a message for you. He says, very nice presentation. Thanks. He'll be looking for the book.
Awesome. Awesome.
As will I.
Thank y'all. Thank you so much for having me and letting me share my big year experience.
All right. Thanks, Nicole. Thank you very much for sharing tonight.
Michelle, thank you very much for bringing your friend and Nicole. And Nicole, thank you. That was a very interesting year.
Yeah, thank you, Nicole.
Thank you.
Great job.
You're welcome. You're welcome. My pleasure.